Sunlight filters through haze over the Rhine, 1936. German troops march boldly into the demilitarized zone, boots thudding on bridges, the world watching. No shots fired, Britain and France protest mildly, emboldening Hitler. The rise accelerated, alliances forged in shadows of ambition. From chancellor to dictator, power consolidated through terror and spectacle. The Axis Pact with Mussolini's Italy in 1936, the Rome-Berlin Axis, a bond of fascist brotherhood. Japan joined in 1937 via Anti-Comintern Pact, Eyes on Asia. Early victories intoxicating. Anschluss in March 1938. Austria annexed amid cheering crowds in Vienna, flowers thrown at Wehrmacht tanks. Hitler returned a hero. Balcony speeches igniting frenzy. Parades under brilliant suns, but behind, Gestapo vans prowling nights. Munich Agreement that September. Sudetenland swallowed. Czech defenses breached without war. Chamberlain's concession, intended to buy time, fed the beast. Propaganda machines whirred. Films like Triumph of the Will immortalized the myth. Crowds roaring, Sieg Heil, in unison. Pivotal events stacked. Spanish Civil War aid to Franco-honed Luftwaffe tactics. Condor Legion bombing Guernica in rehearsal for horrors ahead. Treaties signed in opulent halls, ink drying on pacts like the 1939 Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, stunning the world, Stalin and Hitler dividing Poland in secret protocols. Spotlights on signing ceremonies, champagne toasts masking mutual distrust. The seductive power of control gripped the nation. Economy booming on rearmament, unemployment vanishing, autobahns snaking across landscapes like veins of steel. Soldiers felt invincible. Marching in goose-step precision, rifles gleaming. Public demonstrations swelled. May Day parades repurposed as Nazi festivals. Workers' flags replaced by swastikas. Alliances extended influence. Romania and Hungary courted, resources secured. Hitler's speeches, voice rising to crescendos, promised destiny. The German people are awakening. In Berlin, the chancellery expanded into grandeur, columns soaring like ancient Rome. Daytime rallies radiant, nights haunted by arrests. The rise felt euphoric, a nation reborn from Versailles' chains. Early invasions, Memel from Lithuania in 1939, bloodless. Then Bohemia and Moravia, Czech remnants absorbed. Propaganda depicted it as liberation, crowds in Prague ambivalent but subdued. Tanks rolling through alpine passes, villagers waving hesitantly. The psychology of seduction. Leaders like Goering amassed art. Ribbentrop negotiated with flair, believing in the Führer's vision. Societal texture. Schools taught racial science, children saluting portraits of Hitler. Women awarded crosses for birthing Aryans, homes adorned with Mein Kampf. Ceremonies marked milestones, Hitler's 50th birthday in 1939, massive military parade, planes droning overhead. Tension simmers, whispers of war in diplomatic circles, but victories drowned doubts. The alliance with Italy promised Mediterranean dominance, though Mussolini's bluster hid weaknesses. Japan's aggression in China mirrored Germany's hunger. Hitler's belief solidified, the West appeased, the East ripe. But as August waned, the pact with Stalin cleared the path for Poland. The empire expanded like a shadow at dusk, but fate whispered warnings unheeded. Remilitarization of Rhineland risked all. Generals prepared retreat orders, but inaction from Locarno powers confirmed Hitler's gamble. Alliances weren't ironclad. Italy's Ethiopian conquest in 1935 strained League of Nations, aligning with Germany against sanctions. Early victories bred overconfidence. Air Force rebuilt secretly, defying Versailles. Pilots trained in Soviet Union paradoxically. Public fervor peaked at events like the 1937 Nuremberg Rally. 100,000 attendees in trance-like adoration. Propaganda infiltrated art. Degenerate modern works purged, heroic sculptures erected. Control extended to churches, concordant with Vatican in 1933, buying time before suppression. The rise's dark underbelly. Euthanasia programs tested on disabled, foreshadowing horrors. Emotionally, it felt like ascension, a people united in purpose, blind to the precipice. Pivotal, the 1939 Steel Pact with Italy, formalizing military aid. As troops massed on Polish border, ceremonies blessed the endeavor, priests sprinkling holy water on tanks. The seductive illusion, power as aphrodisiac, crowds a mirror to ego. But in quiet moments, doubts flickered like candlelight in wind. Part 4. The fall. Betrayal cracks appear in the facade. September 1st, 1939. German forces storm Poland, Stukas diving with sirens wailing, a psychological terror. Hitler expected swift capitulation, Britain and France to protest but fold, as in Munich. But the ultimatum arrives, withdraw or war. In the Chancellery, tension mounts as the 11 a.m. deadline passes. Ribbentrop delivers the news, face ashen. Hitler, pacing, halts abruptly. What now? He snaps at his foreign minister, voice laced with accusation. Ribbentrop stammers. I assume that means they will be at war with us. The betrayal stings. Hitler's own miscalculation. The dream unraveling. He had believed Chamberlain's weakness eternal, Britain too isolationist, scarred by Somm's ghosts. Strategic errors compound. The Soviet pact secured the East, but underestimated Allied resolve. Disillusionment spreads. Generals like Franz Halder note in diaries the Führer's shock, the room heavy with regret. Hitler's fist unclenching, a map crumpling, faces distorting in dim light as reality sinks in. Fading voices echo Chamberlain's broadcast, smoke from artillery in Poland drifting metaphorically into Berlin's skies. Buildings seem to crumble in metaphor, the Reich's foundations shaking, emotional unraveling intensifies. Hitler retreats to his study, portraits of Frederick the Great staring down accusingly. Soldiers on the front, high on early successes, now face a two-front specter. Nations fracture. Poland fights valiantly, Warsaw bombed, but the West's declaration shifts the board. Betrayal from within. Ribbentrop's diplomacy failed. Assurances of British inaction proven false. The English are bluffing, Hitler had said weeks prior. Now the bluff called. Rain begins outside, streaking windows like tears. Leaders like Goebbels spin it as encirclement by plutocrats, but privately, doubt creeps. Insert dialogue. In a heated meeting, Hitler rages to aides, I did not want this war with the West. Goering, ever the sycophant, replies, Mein Führer, the Luftwaffe will crush them. But the tone falters. The fall accelerates. French mobilization, British expeditionary force preparing. Strategic blunders, delaying Western offensive, allowing Dunkirk evacuation later. Emotionally, it feels like a prison of his making, pried the bars. A radio falling silent, operators' hands trembling, Londoners donning masks. The cracks widen, disillusionment a slow poison. The Gleiwitz incident, a false flag on August 31st, justified invasion, SS men in Polish uniforms staging attacks. Propaganda claims defense, but the world sees aggression. In meetings, Hitler dismissed warnings from Canaris about Allied guarantees to Poland. Betrayals sting. Mussolini's neutrality declaration on September 4th, Italy not ready, fracturing the Axis facade. Soldiers' letters home reveal unease. The euphoria of advance tainted by news from West. Society under strain. Blackouts in Berlin, rationing whispers. The unraveling psychological. Hitler's insomnia worsens, decisions impulsive. The empire he built was now his prison, illusions betraying the architect. Crumbling facades in bombed Polish towns mirroring internal collapse, voices of diplomats fading in echo. Dialogue punctuates. To Eva Braun privately, they have forced my hand, he mutters, vulnerability rare. The fall, inexorable, begins here. Part 5. The collapse. Reflection. Legacy. Ruins stretch under a blood-red sunset. Berlin in 1945, a skeletal city, rubble piled like forgotten dreams. The full breakdown. From September 3's declaration, the war spirals. Phony war gives way to blitzkrieg in West. France falls in 1940, but Britain endures. Operation Barbarossa in 1941 invades Soviet Union. Overextension fatal. Stalingrad's frozen hell in 1943. Millions dead in snow. D-Day 1944 breaches Fortress Europe, Allies closing in. Hitler's bunker, a concrete tomb, echoes with rants as maps show shrinking fronts. Symbolic? Empty offices in the Chancellery, papers scattered, radios silent, but for Allied broadcasts. Abandoned battlefields, rusted tanks in Ardennes, ghost towns in Russia. Internal reflection. Too late, Hitler admits in fragments, I underestimated the mongrel races. But blame shifts to traitors. The realization, appeasement was no weakness, but time bought for rearmament. Pride blinded, destiny a mirage. Bunker's final moments. Cyanide vial dropping, flames consuming bodies. The collapse. Reich divided. Nuremberg trials exposing horrors. Holocaust's 6 million ghosts. Camps like Auschwitz, symbols of evil. Legacy lingers darkly. Germany partitioned, Cold War born from ashes. Consequences. 70 million dead globally, Europe rebuilt via Marshall Plan, but scars eternal. Hitler's missteps, declaring war on America post-Pearl Harbor, racial policies alienating potential allies, sealed fate. Reflection. What if he heeded warnings? The dream devoured itself, power corrupting absolutely. In the silence of defeated halls, truth spoke. Empires built on hate crumbled to dust. Empty throne, wind-whispering regrets. The war's end echoes through decades. A cautionary tale where ambition meets hubris in history's unforgiving mirror. Subscribe for more forgotten stories of World War II, where power, pride, and destiny collide in the shadows of history. The clock ticks mercilessly in the dimly lit Reich Chancellery, Berlin. Shadows dance across the marble floors, cast by the faint glow of desk lamps flickering like dying stars. Outside, the city holds its breath under a heavy September sky, gray clouds pressing down as if the heavens themselves sense the storm about to break. A radio crackles to life, its static slicing through the silence like a knife. Adolf Hitler, the Führer of the Third Reich, leans forward, his eyes narrowed, fists clenched on the polished oak table. Maps of Europe sprawl before him, red arrows marking the swift advance into Poland just 2 days prior. The invasion had been flawless, tanks rolling like thunder, Luftwaffe planes screaming overhead, Polish defenses crumbling in the dust. But now this broadcast from London, Neville Chamberlain's voice emerges, thin and resolute, echoing through the ether. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that, unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. Hitler's aides stand frozen, their uniforms stiff, faces pale in the half-light. The room smells of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, the air thick with unspoken dread. Chamberlain continues, his words a hammer blow. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany. Silence crashes in. Hitler's jaw tightens, a vein pulsing at his temple. The empire he envisioned, the 1,000-year Reich, teeters on the edge of an abyss he never believed would open. London streets empty, gas masks distributed, children wave from evacuation trains. The tension coils like a spring, the world suspended in that moment, boots echoing in empty hallways, distant sirens wailing as air raid drills begin. No one speaks. The Führer turns slowly, his blue eyes burning with a mix of fury and disbelief. Britain, that island of shopkeepers he dismissed as weak, has drawn the line. The war he gambled would be contained now engulfs the continent. Smoke from a forgotten cigar curls upward, symbolizing the illusions about to burn away. But in this instant, the hook is set. The viewer plunged into the raw emotion of history's pivot, where pride meets reality in a collision of fates. The declaration ripples outward like a shockwave. In London, families huddle around radios in dimly lit parlors, the scent of tea and fear mingling as Chamberlain's voice fades. Big Ben chimes in the distance, its toll a funeral bell for peace. Across the channel, French Prime Minister Édouard Daladier echoes the sentiment hours later, his broadcast sealing the alliance's fate. But back in Berlin, the true tension unfolds in Hitler's inner circle. Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop shifts uneasily, his polished boots scraping the floor. Hitler had assured them all, Britain would bluff, France would follow suit, the West too scarred by the Great War to fight again. Yet here it is, the ultimatum ignored, the gauntlet thrown. Hitler's hand slams the table, papers fluttering like fallen leaves in autumn wind, faces blurring in shock. The room's opulent chandeliers sway slightly from a distant vibration, perhaps a truck rumbling by, or the first tremors of mobilization. Sensory overload grips the scene, the metallic tang of fear in the air, the faint hum of telegraphs relaying the news to field commanders in Poland. Generals like Walter von Brauchitsch exchange glances, their medals glinting under the light, knowing this escalates their blitzkrieg into a global inferno. The hook deepens. Viewers feel the pulse of history, the intimate betrayal of expectations. Hitler's vision of a quick conquest shatters like glass underfoot. Outside, Berliners pause in the streets. Newspapers clutched in trembling hands, whispers of Krieg spreading like wildfire. The tension builds to a crescendo, the world on the brink, as the Führer's mind races through the calculations that led here. But fate, that cruel director, has rewritten the script. A young Adolf Hitler in the trenches of the Great War, mud caking his uniform, gas masks dangling like grim pendants. The dream began here, in the hellish fields of Flanders, where a corporal named Hitler survived poison gas and artillery barrages, emerging with a burning conviction that Germany had been stabbed in the back. Betrayed by weak leaders and insidious forces, Versailles Treaty, that hated document signed in 1919, stripped the nation of pride, territory, and might, imposing reparations that crippled the economy. Hyperinflation followed in the 1920s, wheelbarrows of worthless marks buying bread, families starving in the shadows of crumbling Weimar Republic. Hitler, the failed artist turned agitator, saw opportunity in the chaos. His belief, Aryan supremacy, a master race destined to rule, needing Lebensraum, living space, to expand eastward, purging the inferior. Crowds in beer halls cheer as Hitler rants, fists pounding podiums. He believed Britain, that imperial power, shared a racial kinship, admiring Germanic strength. Why fight brothers when the true enemy lay in Bolshevism and Judaism? Appeasement fed this delusion. In 1933, appointed chancellor amid economic despair, unemployment at 6 million, Hitler consolidated power swiftly. The Reichstag fire, a convenient blaze blamed on communists, enabled the Enabling Act, dismantling democracy. Night of the Long Knives in 1934 purged rivals like Ernst Röhm, blood staining the streets as the SS rose. Society transformed under the swastika. Youth indoctrinated in Hitlerjugend. Bonfires of banned books lighting the night. Propaganda films by Leni Riefenstahl glorifying the regime. The dream blinded him, pride in the Volk, destiny calling for greatness, but delved deeper into the psyche. Hitler felt it viscerally, the humiliation of defeat echoing in his soul like a perpetual wound. He wrote in Mein Kampf, penned in Landsberg prison after the failed 1923 putsch. The aim of human existence is not the preservation of a state, but the preservation of the species. His ideology, a toxic brew of nationalism, racism and mysticism, promised renewal. Early influences, Wagner's operas stirring romantic heroism, Houston Stewart Chamberlain's writings on racial purity. The political climate ripe, communist threats, conservative fears, propelled the Nazis from fringe to forefront. By 1934, with Hindenburg's death, Hitler became Führer, absolute. Societal conditions fueled the fire. Women relegated to Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, kitchen, church, while men drilled in paramilitary groups. Propaganda saturated the airwaves, Joseph Goebbels orchestrating rallies where thousands howled in unison, torches flickering like stars in a fascist galaxy. Hitler believed Britain would understand, even ally. Neville Chamberlain's policy of appeasement seemed proof. In 1935, the Anglo-German naval agreement allowed Germany to rebuild its fleet, a nod to naval parity. Hitler saw weakness, not strategy. Berlin streets alive with banners, children waving flags, the illusion of unity masking terror. The dream extended to economy. Autarky pursued through 4-year plans, synthetic fuels and armaments booming under Hermann Göring. Pride swelled. Olympics in 1936 showcased Aryan athletes like Jesse Owens ironically upstaging the narrative, but the facade held. Belief blinded to disaster, ignoring warnings from economists about unsustainable spending, dismissing military doubts. Emotionally, it felt like destiny, a rebirth from ashes. Yet cracks lurked, purges creating paranoia, isolation breeding hubris. In the glow of early triumphs, Hitler dreamed of an empire eternal, but shadows lengthened, unseen. Expand the texture. Daily life under the regime pulsed with enforced enthusiasm. Radios blared Volkssender broadcasts, families gathering for Hitler's speeches, voices booming with promises of glory. In rural villages, farmers toiled under blood and soil ideology, romanticizing agrarian purity. Urban factories hummed with slave labor precursors. Jewish businesses boycotted since 1933. Stars daubed on windows. Kristallnacht in 1938 shattered illusions for some. Synagogues burning, glass crunching under boots, but many turned blind eyes, seduced by stability. Hitler's inner world, sleepless nights in the Berghof, poring over maps, convinced of his genius. He confided to aides, "Providence has ordained that I should be the greatest liberator of humanity." The belief in British inaction stemmed from Munich. September 1938, where Chamberlain ceded Sudetenland, waving the Peace for Our Time paper upon return. Hitler laughed privately, viewing it as cowardice. The dream wrapped him like a shroud, warm and suffocating, blinding to the gathering storm. Propaganda posters depicted Britain as decadent, France as effete. Early alliances teased. Talks with Britain faltered, but the belief persisted. They wouldn't fight for Poland, a distant Slavic land. Societal fervor peaked in Nuremberg rallies, seas of uniforms undulating, searchlights piercing the sky in cathedral of light spectacles. The psychology, a man orphaned young, rejected by art academies, finding purpose in hatred. It felt like vindication, the nation's wounds his own. But as September 1939 dawned, the dream teetered, pride a fragile throne.